Hello and welcome to the Alpha Edge Podcast, the show for men over 50 who refuse to fade out, slow down, play small, or settle for average. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert, coach, and founder of the Alpha Edge, and I am here to help you get and stay strong in every dimension of your life, physically, mentally, emotionally, morally, and spiritually. You're here because you're ready to reclaim your power, to own your masculinity, and lead your life with strength and purpose. If you're ready to sharpen your edge, revive your drive, and lead like a man who's built for more, you're in the right place. All right, men, let's get after it. All right, guys, here we go. Today we're going to step into what might be the most important or probably the most challenging pillar in this entire holistic strength series. So if you're not familiar, this is going to be week 3 in a 5-week series. We're going to talk about the 5 pillars of strength that we talk about in our Alpha Edge program. And just to recap, that's going to be physical strength, mental strength, emotional strength, moral strength, and spiritual strength. So we've already covered the first 2 pillars. We talked about physical strength 2 weeks ago, which, let's be honest, that's a fun one for me, for most of you guys out there, right? Lifting heavy things, training hard, eating well. That's basically home base for me. And then last week we covered mental strength, where we're sharpening our mind, we're staying curious, we're learning, we're thinking clearly. And look, I'm not gonna lie, that's another area where I naturally gravitate towards. But today we're talking about pillar number 3, and that's emotional strength. And I'm just going to say it straight up. This is the pillar I struggle with the most. Now, I don't mean a little. I mean, this is the one I've really had to fight for and continue to have to fight for. This is the one that humbles me over and over and over again. And this is the one that reminds me regularly, I might add, that the inner battleground is real. Because here's the truth about me. I tend to run a little hot. I've always fought with anxiety. I get overwhelmed very easily. And sometimes it just feels like the tiniest little thing, a comment, a tone, a situation, just flips this switch inside of me before I even know what's happening. And yeah, I'm way, way better than I used to be. But the fact that this is still my hardest pillar, that's exactly why this episode matters, because I know I'm not the only guy out there, right, that struggles with this. I talk to men every single day in coaching, in our groups, in our DMs, and so many of them are extremely disciplined physically. Maybe they're mentally sharp, maybe they're solid in their morals, they're growing spiritually, but their emotional strength, man, that's where the cracks very often start to show up. A lot of us, we get reactive, we get triggered, we shut down, we blow up, we escape into comfort, we avoid hard conversations, we let stress just eat us alive, and we let anxiety run the show. We often betray our values in moments of emotion. Anybody else feel me here? And here's the kicker. Most of us were never taught how to be emotionally strong. Right? We were either told to suck it up and shut it down, or we were pulled into the modern mess of share every feeling immediately and dramatically, right? So no in between. Neither of those models produce strong men. So today we're going to carve a different path, a masculine path, a stoic path, a path where we acknowledge emotions, but we do not obey them, where we feel free to feel emotions, but we lead ourselves through them with calm strength and clear purpose. And I'll share something with you personal here. Just this last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago, I was sharing with the guys over in our Alpha Edge group that I was actually sharing some of my struggles around emotional strength and some anger things that I had going on. And I actually re-downloaded our Stoic Edge workbook. So this is one I created as a companion to go to an episode I recorded probably 4 or 5 months ago called Live Like a Warrior, the Stoic Code for Men Over 50. So yeah, I created that, right, as a resource for you guys to kind of help build this stoic emotional strength. I went through it when I built it, and I just recently re-downloaded that, and I am going back through that again. So I started going through that again because emotional strength isn't something you master once. At least it's not for me. It's something you train. It's something you sharpen. It's something you recommit to. So if emotional strength is your weak link, if your reactions sometimes betray the man you're trying to become, if stress and triggers and overwhelm are still winning more battles than they should, then brother, you're in the right place today, because this episode, we're going deep. We're going to unpack why so many of us guys struggle emotionally, what emotional strength actually is, and most importantly, how to build it. All right, let's start with some hard truth. Most modern men are emotionally weak. And it's not entirely their fault. Like, seriously, you guys know I am really big on radical responsibility, but if you're a man in your 50s, 60s, or beyond, chances are you were never taught emotional strength. Nobody modeled it. Nobody explained it. Nobody showed you what healthy masculine emotional leadership looks like. Most of us grew up caught between two rather extreme models of masculinity, and I feel like both of them have failed us. So let's take a look at this. Model number one is that old school of shut up and stuff it down approach. And I'll get personal here and tell you this is how I was raised. So, love you, Dad. Side note, my dad listens to every one of these episodes here. But a lot of us were raised with this version of masculinity that said, don't feel, don't cry, don't talk, don't show anything, just power through. You could be bleeding out emotionally, but the message was suck it up, act like a man, move on. And yeah, look, that created men who could grind, men who could endure, men who could shoulder enormous burdens. So not all bad, but it also created, as a side effect, men who are emotionally volatile. Men who are disconnected from their own inner world, men who would suddenly explode after months of quiet pressure, men who couldn't communicate with their wives, men who passed their emotional confusion onto their sons. Hello, I'm guilty here. This model creates stoicism with a lowercase s. So this is emotional suppression, not true stoicism with a capital S, which is emotional mastery. So now let's compare that, or rather, let's contrast that with this second model, this modern hyper-emotional model. So fast forward to today, I'm going to go on a limb here and say most dudes listening to this, if you're over 50, you were probably raised in that first model. I think a lot of us probably were, that old school shut up and stuff it down kind of approach. But today, our culture has swung wildly in the opposite extreme. So now, oftentimes, the message being modeled for younger men is share everything you feel. Your emotions are your truth. Express everything immediately. Be soft, be sensitive, be vulnerable 24/7. And look, healthy vulnerability has its place. But what we're seeing now is emotional indulgence. Men who are led by their emotions instead of leading through them. And what this produces is weak, passive men. Men who can't make decisions. Men who crumble under stress. Men who are constantly overwhelmed. Men who mistake emotional chaos for emotional honesty. And here's the deal. Neither of those models produces strong, reliable, grounded men. So the real problem, I feel like, is that nobody has really modeled for us or taught us this middle path, this masculine path. It's almost never taught. That middle path is feel your emotions, understand your emotions, but do not obey your emotions. Do not become a slave to your emotions. It's emotional awareness without emotional submission. It looks like calm leadership, controlled response, clear thinking, value-driven action, courage and grace under pressure. And here's the thing. Emotional strength doesn't come naturally to most guys. Not because we're broken, but because we're untrained. Look, we train our muscles. Some of us train our minds, we train our bodies, but emotional discipline, a lot of us guys never get in the reps in this category. So you add on top of that the pressures of being in this stage of life. So we're all guys in the second half of life here, and we're caring more than ever. Chances are, if we're lucky enough to still have our parents, we've got aging parents, we've got maybe marriage challenges, work stress, financial pressures. Maybe we're looking at retirement, not sure how that's going to work. We got kids, grown kids, most of us, and grandkids. We got health concerns, and we got responsibility everywhere. And without emotional training, all of that weight can crush us. So we end up reacting instead of responding. We trigger instead of lead. We numb out instead of facing these things head on. And finally, I think a lot of us lack brotherhood. And this is a huge one, right? Men were never meant to develop emotional strength alone. In fact, I would go on a limb and say you can't. Warriors train together. Shoulders sharpen each other. Soldiers sharpen each other, and iron sharpens iron. But today, Most guys are isolated. We're lone wolves. We're disconnected. We're carrying everything by ourselves. And emotional isolation breeds emotional weakness and instability. This is why brotherhood matters. This is why inner circles of strong men matter. And this is why the alpha edge matters. So why do modern men struggle with emotional strength? I think it's because we're given the wrong models, expected to perform under massive pressure, and never taught how to lead ourselves emotionally. But the good news is this: like anything, emotional strength, like any other strength, is a skill. It can be trained, it can be mastered. And today, we're going to start building it. All right, guys, let's talk about what emotional strength actually is. And I'm going to pull heavily from Stoicism here. So we've talked about why so many of us guys struggle with emotional strength. Let's break down what emotional strength really is, because most men have never been given that clear, masculine, grounded definition or that example. And here's the first thing you need to know. Emotional strength is not emotional suppression, and it's not emotional indulgence. Those are the two extremes that we just talked about. Suppression says, I don't feel anything. Indulgence says, I feel everything and must express it immediately. And neither one of those is strength. Neither of those lead to leadership. Neither builds a man capable of standing firm when life gets chaotic. So let's clear the slate here and let's redefine emotional strength. I want to make the case that emotional strength equals emotional leadership. That's it. That's the whole thing. Emotional strength means you lead your emotions. They do not lead you. You feel what you feel. You acknowledge what you feel. You understand what you feel. You process what you feel, but you do not let your feelings dictate your behavior, your decisions, or your character. It's the difference between having emotions and being ruled by emotions. Every man feels anger. Every man feels fear. Every man feels frustration and sadness and overwhelm and anxiety. The emotionally weak man reacts from those places. The emotionally strong man responds from a deeper place, from his values, his virtues, his purpose. And this is exactly what the Stoics taught us. So a lot of people, when they hear the word Stoic, they imagine this cold statue, silent, stiff, detached, granite, staring out into the distance like some kind of unemotional robot. But that's not Stoicism at all. That's, like I said, that's Stoicism with a little s. So a while back, in fact, as a resource to the podcast we did, 4, 5, 6 months ago on Stoicism, I created a Stoic Edge workbook. And in there, I say it like this: Stoicism is the discipline of focusing only on what you can control, accepting what you can't, and living with virtue, purpose, and courage. And that right there, I think, is a good definition of emotional strength. Not shutting off emotions, not drowning in emotions, but mastering your responses. So whenever you feel a wave of emotion rising up inside you, whether that's anger, anxiety, overwhelm, frustration, whatever, the Stoic man asks one simple thing: is this in my control? If the answer is yes, he's going to take right action. In fact, he's going to take what the Stoics call virtuous action. If the answer is no, he's going to release it. An emotionally weak man tries to control what he can't. An emotionally strong man takes responsibility for what he can control. That one filter alone has saved marriages, careers, friendship, mental health. So let's just do a quick recap on the 4 virtues that we'll call these the backbone of emotional strength here. The Stoics taught us that a man should lead his life with 4 primary values. Number 1 is wisdom. You need to be able to see clearly. Wisdom says, what's really happening here? What's true? You got to have wisdom. Virtue number 2 is courage. This is acting rightly. Courage says, I'm going to do the hard thing because it's the right thing. Number 3 is justice. We got to treat people rightly. Justice says, I will lead with fairness, strength, and integrity. And finally, number 4 is temperance, a word we don't really use a whole lot today, but basically this just means having self-control, controlling yourself. And temperance says, I will not be mastered by desire, impulse, or emotion. If you want a perfect 4-part definition of emotional strength, I kind of feel like that's it. You're going to see clearly, you're going to act boldly, you're going to lead fairly, and you're going to control yourself. Because the emotionally strong man is calm, not because he feels nothing, but because he masters what he feels. I want you to hear that again. The calm, grounded, steady man isn't calm because life is easy. He's calm because he's trained himself not to be jerked around by circumstances, by people, by stress, or by his own inner storms. He's built an internal anchor. He's unshakable. People feel this when he walks into a room. His wife feels it. His kids feel it. His coworkers feel it. Other guys feel it. That's emotional strength. It's not coldness and it's not softness, but it's this grounded, calm, masculine leadership. And the good news is, again, that emotional strength is trainable. We can train our emotional strength. We can get stronger emotionally. And this is where a lot of guys finally find hope. Certainly, that's been the case for me. You don't have to be naturally Zen-like. You don't have to be born with this emotional discipline. And you don't have to magically just get better, because that's not really a thing. Think of emotional strength like a muscle, and like any other muscle, it grows when you train it. That's why the Stoics were so big on daily practices. And that's why the Stoic Edge workbook includes a 7-day challenge. And that's why this is pillar 3 of the Alpha Edge program. Most men have never trained emotional strength. But when you do, everything changes. All right, guys, let's switch gears here and talk about the enemies of emotional strength. So we've defined what emotional strength is. Let's talk about what gets in the way of emotional strength, because every man who tries to grow in this area runs into the same enemies. I call these the 3 emotional traps, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say every single one of you guys listening to this has fallen into at least one of them, and probably all 3. I certainly know that I have. So let's break these down. Enemy number 1 is the trigger trap. Look, this one's really simple. Most dudes don't know what sets them off. We just snap, we react, we shut down, we blow up, we get overwhelmed, we get frustrated without ever stopping to ask, wait, why'd that hit me so hard? And because we never take the time to really identify that trigger, we never train the response. We just end up repeating that cycle again and again and again. And in the Stoic Edge workbook, and side note, guys, I keep referencing the Stoic Edge workbook. It's a free workbook. It's a free guide. You guys can download it. I'll throw a link to that in the show notes here. You guys can find that in whatever app you listen to this podcast on. But in that workbook, I built the very first day of the 7-day Stoic Challenge around this. Know your triggers. So that day one, first thing you guys are going to do is to know your triggers. And it's the starting point for a reason, because if you don't know where the landmines are, you're going to step on them every single day. The emotionally weak man thinks, this is just the way I'm wired. This is just the way I am. But the emotionally strong guy is going to ask himself, wait, why'd that happen? And how do I lead myself to be better next time? Awareness isn't weakness. Awareness is the beginning of mastery. All right. Enemy number 2 is the comfort trap. And this one might be the biggest emotional killer of modern men. Here's the truth. Comfort is emotional Novocaine. And men today, we're drowning in it. When we're stressed or anxious or overwhelmed, most guys don't face it. We escape it. And the way that looks takes a lot of different forms. We escape into food and alcohol and porn and scrolling and news, work, busyness, numbing, avoidance, all kinds of things, right? And modern life makes it so freaking easy to avoid our inner world. But avoidance breeds fragility. Every time you numb instead of face, every time you distract instead of deal with something, every time you soothe instead of strengthening, your emotional resilience just got weaker. Comfort is awesome for couches, but it's terrible for masculine character. Emotionally strong men do not avoid discomfort. They use it. They train through it. They grow because of it. As I wrote in my workbook, comfort is a sedative. Discomfort is your training ground. So the road to emotional strength runs straight through discomfort, and there is no shortcut to that. All right, enemy number 3 is the identity trap. And this one's sneaky because it feels true. Men start forming identities around their emotional struggles. They say things like, I don't know, I'm just an angry guy. It's the way I'm wired. I'm just anxious. I'm just overwhelmed. I've always been like this. That's just my personality. This is just who I am. And every time you say that, you reinforce that. So hear this. Your emotions are real, but your emotions are not your identity. Anger is a signal, not a personality. Anxiety is a state, not a destiny. Overwhelm is a moment. It's not a character trait. I know I've fallen into this one many, many times, but When a man starts to believe this is just who I am, he stops fighting. He stops training. He stops growing, right? Because it seems inevitable. He surrenders to emotional weakness and he calls it acceptance. Listen, if emotional strength can be trained, and it absolutely can, then emotional weakness can be reversed. You can become calmer. You can become more grounded. You can become more unshakable. You can build the emotional strength your family has always needed from you. But you cannot do any of that if you believe your emotional patterns are permanent. They're not. Your emotions are habits, not identity. And habits can, in fact, be retrained. So, guys, hear me on this. These three enemies must be named before they can be defeated. The trigger trap, the comfort trap, the identity trap. These are the enemies of emotional mastery. Every one of you listening to this has fallen into them. Every one of you listening to this can break out of them. And the rest of this episode is going to show you exactly how to do that. So let's go. Let's talk about how do we build emotional strength. It's time to get into the part that every man needs. How do you actually build emotional strength? How do we get emotionally stronger? How do you actually get better at managing this? Because emotional strength isn't some mystical trait that only a few of us lucky guys were born with. It's a skill. It's a discipline. I would go so far as to say it's a daily practice. And the Stoics, these guys were warriors, kings, philosophers, slaves even. They left us a blueprint that is as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. And again, guys, in that workbook, the Stoic Edge workbook, I break down these practices into simple, actionable steps. And today I'm going to kind of walk through the core ones, the ones that actually make you stronger starting today. So let's hit a few of these big ones. Let's go back and let's re-examine number one, right at the top of this list. You know it's coming. It's know your triggers. It is first for a reason because you can't control what you refuse to notice. Most men go through life getting triggered without ever understanding why. One minute they're fine, the next minute they snap, and they think the problem is out there somewhere. Hello, so guilty of this one. But guys, the problem is untrained awareness. So what I want you to do is take a few minutes, sit down, and write out your top 3 emotional triggers. What is it? Is it being disrespected? Is it feeling ignored? Is it when you feel out of control? Is it when you feel like you're being rushed or overwhelmed? Is it when you're being interrupted? Is it when you're feeling unappreciated? Whatever it is, write it down, name them, own them. Because once you know your triggers, they stop ambushing you, or at least they stop ambushing you as much because you start to see them coming. And the moment you see a trigger, you got a choice. And that choice is the doorway to emotional strength. Tip number 2 is to practice rehearsing the worst. So this was a big principle in Stoicism, and it sounds dark, but this is actually one of the most powerful emotional tools ever created. Each morning, maybe take 30 to 60 seconds and ask yourself, what could go wrong today? Then visualize yourself responding with calm strength. Maybe the meeting gets tense. Maybe your wife is upset. Maybe the traffic is horrible. Maybe an unexpected problem hits you. The emotionally weak man is blindsided by life, but the emotionally strong man, he's prepared for it. So anticipation builds emotional armor. And this preparation for this is going to help you build resilience. And look, this simple, short practice alone can change your entire day. So guys, practice rehearsing the worst. It sounds kind of grim, but it's a strong, strong way for you to actually visualize yourself handling conflict in a strong, grounded manner. All right, number 3, guys, let's have some sort of morning mental prep. Let's set our emotional operating system early in the day. So before you engage the world, ask yourself, okay, how am I going to show up today? How do I want to show up today? Not how I feel, but how am I going to behave? Am I going to be grounded? Am I going to be patient? Am I going to be slow to anger and quick to listen? Am I going to respond rather than react? Emotionally strong men don't wait for emotional emergencies to decide who they are. They choose that ahead of time. Tip number 4, let's have some kind of an evening reflection. So we're going to be soldiers and we're going to have this after action review. So this one right here is where the actual growth happens. So every night I want you to ask yourself, where did I stay composed today? In other words, where did I do a good job? And then let's ask ourselves, all right, where did I lose control? What triggered me? What do I need to do better tomorrow? And look, this isn't about shame. It's not about beating ourselves up. It's about refinement. It's about getting stronger. It's about training. It's about learning from our emotional wins and our emotional losses. The emotionally weak man never looks at his patterns. The emotionally strong man reviews them and he adjusts. And guys, this practice alone will transform your emotional life. Step number 5, embrace discomfort daily. This might be the most alpha edge concept of them all. We preach this all the time, but do something uncomfortable every single day. And look, it doesn't really matter what it is. A lot of guys are into cold plunge, cold shower. Maybe it's a hard workout. Maybe it's ditching some comfort food. Maybe it's doing some kind of task you've been avoiding, or maybe having some sort of a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, waking up earlier, clean up your environment, have a conversation you've been putting off, whatever it is. Just know that discomfort is where emotional discipline is forged. Comfort's going to make you soft. Plain and simple. Discomfort's going to make you sharp. It's going to make you strong. So if you avoid discomfort, you're going to avoid growth. But if you embrace discomfort, you're going to build inner emotional strength. Tip number 6, practice some form of stillness. Let's call this a 5-minute reset. So in a world full of noise and distraction and constant stimulation, stillness is a superpower. So every single day, sit down, be quiet, breathe, pray, meditate. Just be present. So for me, this looks like now I have a couple times in my day. So I'm going to bookend my days with prayer. So the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is a gratitude prayer. The last thing I do before I go to sleep is a gratitude prayer. But I also set some time for reading my Bible and some deep prayer that usually comes later in the morning. I do that every single day. And just recently, I've started a practice where after lunch, I will come up and just in my office, I've got a cup of this functional mushroom powder with some chocolate bone broth protein powder. I know it sounds gross, but it's actually delicious. And I used to just bring that up here and get to work, but now I'm going to take 4 or 5 minutes and just be quiet. I'm going to kind of reflect how the day's going, what I've got still on my plate for the day, but I'm just going to take a little bit of time. I'm just going to try and be present in this moment. Know that stillness slows your reactivity. And stillness is going to lengthen that gap between stimulus and response, and it's going to help build composure. Stillness is a superpower, and the man who can be still is a man who's really tough to shake. All right, tip number 7, serve someone else today. This one surprised a lot of guys, but it's huge. I know this is an area I am personally investing in strongly right now in this area of my life. I am really trying to show up as a servant, and I'm trying to serve out of love. But know that when you're emotionally weak, you're self-focused. It's your problems, your stress, your anxiety, your frustration. I know I get stuck in that loop so easily, but here's the deal. What I have found is that serving someone pulls you out of that emotional spiral. It doesn't have to be anything crazy or difficult. Just maybe send someone an encouraging text. Help someone, offer support, lift someone up. Look your wife in the eyes and be fully present. Strength isn't just for you. It's for others. It's for the people you love. It's for your wife and your children and your community. When you serve, your emotional world stabilizes. Purpose strengthens your emotional spine. So let's put this all together. These practices aren't random. They're not theoretical. They're not just some nice ideas. These are proven, battle-tested tools that build the strongest men in history, and they can build you that way too. The key is being consistent with it. Like I said, 4 or 5 months ago, I wrote that Stoic Edge guide, that Stoic Edge workbook. I completed that work, and then here I am 4 or 5 months later, I'm doing it again. I need to learn to be consistent as in every day practicing this. And remember, we're not chasing perfection. We're not chasing some huge dramatic change here. We're just looking to put in the daily reps and make these small incremental changes over time and to weave these new patterns into the fabric of our very lives, right? Because emotional strength is not something you're going to feel your way into. It's something you're going to train your way into. And brother, the more you train, the calmer you become. And the calmer you become, the stronger you become. And the stronger you become, the more you can lead. And this is how emotional mastery is built. It's one rep at a time. All right, guys, emotional mastery isn't just about what you do. It's also about who you become. So I want to give you what we'll call the warrior's emotional mindset. Let's look at this as a mental operating system of a man who is grounded, he's steady, he's calm, and he's unshakable. That's our aspirational selves, right? I think every guy listening to this can relate to that. And this is where stoicism becomes an identity. And again, I'm saying that stoicism with a capital S, not a small s, as we talked about earlier. And this is where emotional leadership becomes instinct. This is where men rise. So let's get to this. We need to kill the myth that strong men don't feel. They don't feel anything. They don't feel their emotions. Strong men feel deeply, or at least they should. Strong men experience the whole range of human emotion, and that's anger, fear, sadness, stress, overwhelm, everything. But the stoic warrior refuses to let those emotions drive the ship. He feels the emotion, he acknowledges it, he honors it, but he anchors himself in something deeper. That's going to be his values, his mission, his virtues, his character, his purpose. A weak man is led around by whatever emotion hits him at the moment. A strong man chooses his response and then acts accordingly. And this is the core of stoicism. This is the core of emotional strength right here. The stoic warrior is going to slow the moment between trigger and response. So the average guy gets triggered and he instantly reacts. It's kind of like stimulus and then explosion. Hello, again, very, very guilty. But the stoic warrior is going to create a little bit of space here. He's going to lengthen the gap. Something happens, he breathes. He observes. He asks, is this in my control? What does the strongest version of me do right now? So giving yourself just that moment, so just lengthening that gap, creating that little bit of space to breathe, observe, and ask those questions. And then when you respond, you're not responding emotionally, but you're responding with intention. You're responding intentionally. That tiny space, that pause, that is where emotional mastery, emotional strength lives. The stoic warrior chooses virtue over impulse. So know that your impulses are emotional, right? But your virtues, those are intentional. Your impulses say react, defend yourself, escalate, prove your point, win the argument. Your virtues say lead, listen, stay grounded, stay strong, stay firm, do what's right even when it's hard. The weak man's going to obey his impulses. The strong man, he's going to default to his virtues. And this is the big difference between being a boy emotionally and being a man. The stoic warrior stays calm in the chaos. You will build the kind of quiet strength that others feels when you walk into a room. That kind of calm in the chaos. That's the goal. It's not loud strength. It's not postured, pretend strength. It's not fragile strength that cracks under pressure. It's quiet strength. It's the kind of presence that stabilizes everyone around you. When you're calm, your wife relaxes. Your kids soften, your employees trust you, other men respect you, and you feel grounded. Ask yourself this question. When you walk into a room, any room, a room with your wife, with your kids, with your co-workers, what happens? Do people feel your presence? And what is that? Is it an anxious presence? Is it an angry presence? Is it a calm, grounded, collected presence? Know that calm isn't passive. Calm is power. The stoic warrior leads with reason, not emotion. So emotion's a signal. Reason is the commander. And when something hits you emotionally, anger, fear, frustration, you're not going to ignore it. You're going to examine it. You're going to ask yourself, what's really happening here? What's within my control? What's the right thing to do? What would the strongest, most grounded version of me choose to do right now? That's emotional leadership. That's masculine clarity. And this is what separates warriors from the world. Look, I'm not saying that's easy. It's not, but it is the path to emotional strength. The stoic warrior doesn't break character when he's pressured. Now, this is the essence of emotional mastery. Never let your emotions drag you out of the man you're committed to being. So again, going back to your aspirational self, pressure is going to expose your character, right? It's easy to have character when everything's going your way. Stress is going to reveal your discipline, and triggers are going to test your integrity. And the emotionally weak man, he's going to become someone else when the pressure hits. But the emotionally strong man becomes more himself. He leads himself first so that he can lead others well. The stoic warrior doesn't just handle emotions, he transforms them into strength. Now, this is kind of some advanced work. So instead of being depleted by emotions, the stoic warrior learns to use them. So Anger becomes clarity. Fear becomes focus. Stress becomes discipline. Sadness becomes depth. Adversity becomes fuel. The obstacles actually become the path. So this is where you don't run from emotional storms. You actually walk into them with purpose, knowing that they're going to forge you into a stronger, calmer, more capable man. And this is a mindset that changes everything. So when you pause before you react, when you choose virtue over impulse, when you stand firm when you're triggered, when you stay calm in the chaos, when you lead with reason and not emotion, when you refuse to break character under pressure, you become the man your family can trust, the man your wife can lean on, the man your kids can learn from, the man other men respect, the man God designed you to be. This is emotional strength in action. This is emotional strength embodied. And this is what it means to have that stoic edge. All right, guys, let's talk about some practical scenarios here on how to respond like a stoic man here, right? Because emotional strength isn't tested in a quiet room with a journal and a cup of coffee, or it's not tested while you're listening to a podcast. It's tested in the arena, in real life, in the moments that catch you off guard. So I'm going to walk you through, let's do 4 everyday scenarios that dudes over 50 are very likely to encounter at any time. And these are scenarios where emotional weakness causes chaos, but emotional strength creates peace. And look, these aren't hypothetical situations. These are the exact pressure points where emotional strength matters the most. So let's dig in. Scenario number 1, when your wife is emotional or upset. Guys, this one right here is huge because here's the reality. When a woman is emotional, most men respond in one of 2 ways. They either shut down, hello, or they get defensive. And shutting down looks like, whatever, I don't want to talk about this, going quiet, distant, checking out. Defensive looks like, why are you making such a big deal out of this? You always do this. Maybe you turn your back on her, you're matching her emotion with your own. Both responses come from emotional weakness, not strength. The stoic response, you become the anchor. You stay calm, you stay grounded, you listen instead of react. You validate her feelings without surrendering to them, and you lead with presence, not panic. Your steadiness gives her stability. Your calm becomes her calm. A strong man doesn't avoid emotional storms. He stands in them without being shaken. All right, let's move on to the next scenario. Scenario number 2 is when work stress hits you hard. Look, maybe it's a deadline and it's brutal. Maybe your boss dumped something on you the last minute. Maybe it wasn't even fair. Maybe finances are tight. Maybe everything feels like it's on fire. That's me a lot of times. I've run a couple of different businesses as an entrepreneur, and it very often feels like everything's on fire. Here's the emotionally weak response to that. Panic, frustration, complaining, overreacting, being overwhelmed, self-pity, catastrophizing, stress behaviors like overeating, drinking, zoning out. But the stoic warrior applies one filter. Is this in my control? If the answer is yes, we got to act. If the answer is no, we got to let it go. So things we can control, our attitude, our effort, our focus, our discipline, our leadership, our response to the chaos. Things you can't control, other people's decisions, outcomes, timing, the past, the economy, sudden emergencies. The emotionally strong man takes ownership of what he can do, and he releases what he can't. And this is going to produce clarity, and clarity is going to produce calm, and calm is going to produce effectiveness. All right, scenario number 3 is when your kids, and most of us, I'm assuming, have probably adult kids or grandkids, trigger you. Now, this one is going to hit home for a lot of us because kids know exactly how to push buttons, even adult kids. And here's a typical weak emotional response. You're going to snap, lecture, shame. You're going to shut down, resort to sarcasm, reacting like a frustrated child yourself and not like a grounded father. But the stoic path is different. When you feel the trigger rising, you pause, you take a breath, and you ask, what does the strongest, most grounded version of me do right now? And the answer is almost always, you're going to slow your voice, you're going to steady your tone, you're going to stay present, and you're going to lead instead of reacting. Because emotional reactions might feel strong in the moment, but they destroy trust in the long run. Emotional leadership builds trust. And if you're a father or a grandfather, trust is the currency of influence. All right, finally, scenario number 4, when you get blindsided by life. This is a big one, right? Because look, you're not going to live 5, 6, 7 plus decades without life blindsiding you, right? So maybe it's a health scare, a sudden loss, a major disappointment, a betrayal. Maybe it's a dream that's just not working out. It's just collapsing all around you. Maybe it's a situation that was totally out of your control. This is where the difference between emotional fragility and emotional strength becomes crystal clear, because most men fall apart in moments like these. They get swallowed by emotion. They spiral. They shut down. They lose themselves. But the Stoic warrior, he returns to the fundamentals: stillness, breath, presence, virtue, courage, acceptance, purpose. He's going to ground himself first, and then he's going to take the next right step. He doesn't have to solve everything. He just has to lead himself in the moment. Emotional mastery doesn't mean you don't feel the blow. It means you don't break your character because of the blow. So this is what emotional strength looks like in real life. It's not about never feeling triggered. It's not about being perfectly calm all the time. It's not about becoming emotionally numb. Emotional strength is slowing down the reaction, leading with clarity, responding with purpose, staying aligned with your values, choosing virtue over impulse, being someone your family feels safe around, being someone you respect when the dust settles. This is the man you are becoming. This is the path of the Stoic warrior. This is the alpha edge. All right, guys, so we've covered a lot here. We've talked about the traps and the tools, and we've walked through a couple real life scenarios. We've broken down the warrior mindset. Now let's talk about what actually happens when a man becomes emotionally strong, because the results are not subtle. They're not theoretical. They're not maybe. They're not someday. When you build emotional strength, your entire life shifts. This is the part that gives guys hope, because emotional mastery doesn't just make you feel better. It makes you more effective. It makes you more respected. It makes you more grounded, more attractive, more confident, more at peace. Let's walk through the transformations. So number one, your marriage is going to get strong, like instantly. Guys, this is huge. The moment you become less reactive and more grounded, your wife feels it. Women are exquisitely sensitive to the emotional temperature of a man. When you are anxious, she becomes anxious. When you're unstable, she becomes unstable. When you get triggered, she escalates. But when you become calm, when you stop reacting, when you respond instead of exploding, her nervous system settles down. Her walls come down. Her trust increases. Her connection deepens. She feels safe to fall back into her feminine divine energy. And intimacy, both emotional and physical intimacy, becomes easier and becomes more natural. Men think they need better communication. Most of the time, they just actually need better emotional strength. Number two thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to stop being controlled by stress. Stress loses its power when you become stronger than the stressor. So you're going to stop spiraling, you're going to stop overthinking, catastrophizing, and snapping, and shutting down, and drowning in your overwhelm. Instead, you're going to breathe. You're going to assess. You're going to take the next right step. You're going to stay on mission. You're going to keep moving forward. You stop getting tossed around by life because you become the one that's doing the steering. Number three thing I think you guys are going to find is your confidence is going to quietly skyrocket. So I'm not talking about confidence like fake chest puffed out, thumping your chest kind of confidence, not the loud, insecure, look at me kind of confidence. I'm talking about this quiet strength, the kind that other people feel before you even speak, just when you walk into the room. Because when you can control your temper, when you can stay steady under pressure, when you can handle uncomfortable moments, when you can choose your responses instead of reacting, you're going to build a deep respect for yourself. You trust yourself. You like the man you're becoming. You walk differently. You speak differently. You lead differently. And guys, I'm telling you, other people instinctively notice that. They're drawn to that. Okay, number four thing you're going to find when you start to put this into practice and become emotionally strong is your kids are going to respect you more. Kids don't respect emotional volatility. They don't respect hypocritical anger, and they don't respect unpredictable reactions. What they do respect is consistency and calmness and steadiness, fairness, presence. They respect your leadership. Kids learn emotional regulation by watching you regulate your emotions. Strong fathers build strong families, full stop. Number five thing you're going to find when you become emotionally strong is that you become more effective in every area of your life. Emotionally weak men are constantly unproductive because they're always emotionally tangled up. But emotionally strong men, they're going to make better decisions. They communicate clearly. They stay focused and calm and rational. They solve problems faster and they influence people more easily. This is why Stoicism was the philosophy of generals, emperors, warriors, leaders for 2,000 plus years. Emotional strength makes you more effective at everything. Number 6 thing you're going to find is you're going to break old patterns instead of passing them on. Men often repeat the emotional patterns they grew up with. For a lot of us, that's anger, avoidance, withdrawal, shutdown, defensiveness. But when you train emotional strength, you're going to become the line in the sand man, the man who stops the generational pattern and creates a new legacy. Your kids and grandkids benefit from the work you're doing right now. This is legacy level strength. Number 7 thing you're going to find is you become unshakable. So this is the ultimate reward for doing this work. When you train emotional strength day in, day out, you become the kind of man who doesn't flinch. You become the kind of man who doesn't panic or crumble or lash out or lose himself or bow to chaos. You become the kind of guy that doesn't get knocked out of alignment easily. You become like a lighthouse, not the wave. You become the steady one in the storm. You are the man your family, your community, and your brothers can trust and lean on. And that's exactly what we're looking for here, right? We want to build this kind of quiet strength that others feel. They can feel that in our presence. This is the emotional edge, if you will. This is the payoff, and this is why we train. So let's wrap this up, guys. Let's bring this home. I want to leave you with something important. Just remember this. Emotional strength is not something you, quote unquote, learn about. It's something you train. It's something you practice. It's something you live every single day. And if this episode hit home for you, if you listened and thought, man, this is exactly where I struggle, then I want to personally invite you into the next step, because hearing this is good, but doing the work is what changes you. And I want to help you do the work. So like I said, go download the Stoic Edge workbook. It's free. There's no strings attached, but this is the resource that's going to help you start this journey of building emotional strength on a daily, practical, boots on the ground level. It's free. It's simple. It's powerful, and it's designed specifically for guys like us. So inside, you're going to find the core Stoic principles. You're going to find these daily habits that you can practice. You're going to see some real world applications. There's a 7-day Stoic challenge in there. And these are the exact exercises that I am personally using in my own emotional training to become emotionally stronger. I wrote this workbook to be like a battle manual for modern men, something that you can print, carry, open it up, but most of all, apply. So if you want to get stronger emotionally, this is where you might consider starting. Just grab it. The link's there in the show notes. And then step number 2, if you haven't already, go back and listen to that podcast we did, 4 or 5 months ago. It's titled Live Like a Warrior, the Stoic Code for Men Over 50. A lot of good information over there. That episode pairs perfectly with today's message, and it's where the whole idea for the Stoic Edge workbook came from. And if emotional strength is a weak link for you, listening to that episode will give you the full foundation you need. So if you haven't done that yet, or maybe it's been a while, go back and listen to that. It's going to land even harder now that you heard today's conversation. And then step number 3, start training today. Don't wait. Don't say you're going to wait until Monday. You're going to wait until life calms down, because life's not going to calm down. The storms aren't going to stop. The triggers aren't going to disappear, but you can get stronger starting today. Just pick one of those Stoic practices from this episode today and begin. So that was know your triggers, do your morning mental prep, run your evening reflection, embrace one moment of discomfort daily, practice 5 minutes of stillness, serve someone with intentionality. Just pick one of those, because the minute you take that first step, you've stepped onto the path of emotional mastery and getting emotionally stronger. And when you keep showing up, that's when the transformation happens. So there you go. Guys, just keep this in mind. Your wife needs you emotionally strong. Your kids need you emotionally strong. Your grandkids need you emotionally strong. The world needs strong, steady, grounded men now more than ever. And guys, remember, emotional strength isn't just another pillar in this series. It's not a topic. It's not just a nice idea. Emotional strength is the glue that holds the rest of your life together. Remember, you can be physically strong, mentally sharp, you can be morally grounded, you can be spiritually growing. But if you get emotionally triggered, rattled, reactive, overwhelmed, and spun out all the time, everything else is going to fall apart. Emotional weakness is going to damage marriages. It's going to break relationships. It's going to sabotage careers. Emotional weakness is going to keep men small, but emotional strength, that transforms a man from the inside out. So be the man who doesn't break. Be the man who does not panic. Be the man who does not lose himself. Be the man who chooses virtue over impulse, who stays steady when others fall apart. This is the work of the warrior. This is the path of the leader. This is the calling of a mature, masculine man. Remember, you're not too old to change. You are not too set in your ways to grow. You are not disqualified because of your past reactions, and you are not defined by your emotional patterns. You can train this. You can master this. You can become the man your family has always needed. It just starts with one simple choice: to lead yourself emotionally every single day. And remember who you're becoming. You're becoming a man who stands firm in the storm, a man who remains composed under pressure, who responds with clarity instead of reacting with the chaos. You're becoming a man who treats others with strength and kindness, a man who holds himself to a higher standard, who refuses to be ruled by emotion and lives according to virtue, purpose, and honor. That's who you're becoming. This is the Alpha Edge. Keep doing the work. Practice the reps. Lead your emotions. Don't be led by them. Guys, stay on the path. Keep showing up. Remember, iron sharpens iron, and you were made for strength. Men, I will see you in the next episode. Okay, men, that's our show for this week. Don't forget to download our free guide titled How to Raise Your Testosterone Naturally. You can find the download link in the show notes for this episode on whatever app you're listening to this podcast on. If you've enjoyed today's show, here are 3 ways you can support us. Number 1, share this episode with a friend. Number 2, make sure to like and follow this show, and please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Number 3, give us a follow over at Instagram. We're at Alpha Edge Army. So that's Alpha Edge Army all run together. I really appreciate you men taking the time to listen. And until next week, stay strong.